The humans didn't argue. No speeches, no last shots, only quiet steps as they left the stars behind. But silence carries weight in the void, and soon every empire felt it. Trade faltered. Borders trembled. Because when humanity goes quiet, the universe should be afraid. When diplomacy failed, humans simply left ambassador. Sarah Chen stood in the grand chamber of the Stellar Union, her hands clasped behind her back as she listened to the final verdict. The massive hall stretched before her like a cathedral of alien architecture, with representatives from 47 different species arranged in concentric circles. Each delegation occupied platforms designed for their specific biology, from the crystalline formations preferred by the Zenth to the liquid-filled chambers of the Aquari. The voice of Prime Arbiter Kess echoed through the chamber, each word translated simultaneously into dozens of languages by the Union's sophisticated communication network. After extensive deliberation, the Great Tribunal has reached its decision regarding the human membership in the Stellar Union. Sarah had seen this coming for months. The signs were unmistakable. Whispered conversations that stopped when humans entered the room. Sudden changes to protocols that seemed designed to exclude human input. Committee assignments that mysteriously overlooked human candidates despite their qualifications. The evidence is clear, Prime Arbiter Kess continued, his four arms gesturing dramatically. Humans possess an inherent volatility that threatens the stability our Union has maintained for 3 centuries. Your species demonstrates patterns of behavior that are unpredictable and often aggressive. The accusations weren't entirely without basis, Sarah admitted to herself. Humans did approach problems differently than other species. Where others sought consensus through extended deliberation, humans often acted quickly on limited information. Where others preferred established protocols, humans constantly innovated and adapted. What the tribunal saw as dangerous unpredictability, humans called initiative and creativity. Examples abound, continued Kess, warming to his subject. The incident at the Proxima mining station, where human engineers bypassed safety protocols to prevent a catastrophic explosion. While lives were saved, the precedent of ignoring established procedures created system-wide concerns about human reliability. Sarah remembered that incident well. The mining station's automated systems had failed, and conventional repair procedures would have taken 16 hours. The human engineering team had improvised a solution in 4 hours, preventing an explosion that would have killed 12,000 beings. For their innovation and quick thinking, they were now being cited as examples of human unpredictability. Furthermore, Kess added, the human tendency to form emotional attachments across species lines creates complications in diplomatic relationships. The Union operates on principles of logical cooperation, not sentiment. More accusations followed. Humans were too quick to challenge authority when they believed it was wrong. They formed personal friendships with beings from other species, complicating professional relationships. They asked too many questions during meetings. They proposed solutions that hadn't been tested for decades. Finally, Prime Arbiter Kess delivered the formal verdict. The Stellar Union hereby revokes human membership effective immediately. All human personnel, assets, and settlements within Union space must be removed within 60 standard days. This decision is final and non-negotiable. The chamber fell silent. Sarah had expected this outcome, but hearing it officially pronounced still created a hollow feeling in her chest. She looked around at the assembled delegates, searching for any sign of dissent or regret. She found none. Standing slowly, Sarah activated her translation device and spoke in the clear, measured tones she had perfected during 8 years as Earth's ambassador. The human delegation accepts this decision. We will comply fully with the evacuation timeline. We thank the Union for the 80 years of cooperation and wish you continued prosperity. No anger, no threats, no dramatic speeches about injustice. Sarah simply gathered her materials and walked from the chamber, her small delegation following in respectful silence. The evacuation began immediately. Across Union space, humans received notification of their expulsion through official channels. The response was remarkable in its uniformity and efficiency. No riots occurred. No protests were organized. No human settlements declared independence or resisted removal. Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief medical officer at Kepler Station, received his evacuation notice while treating a Thraxian patient suffering from neural parasites. He completed the surgery, filed his final medical reports, and began training his replacement. Before leaving, he quietly uploaded his research on cross-species medical compatibility to the station's database, work that had taken him 15 years to complete. Engineer Lisa Patel was managing the atmospheric processors for 3 separate worlds when the order came. She methodically documented every system, every maintenance schedule, and every potential problem she had identified. Her notes filled 17,000 pages, covering scenarios and solutions that existed nowhere else in Union. Records Captain David Torres commanded the trade, vessel New Horizons, which facilitated complex negotiations between species whose economic systems were fundamentally incompatible. His ship had successfully mediated over 400 trade disputes. He turned over detailed protocols for managing these relationships, including personal insights about individual negotiators that had taken decades to develop. The pattern repeated throughout Union space. Humans didn't just leave. They left everything in perfect order. They transferred knowledge freely, trained their replacements thoroughly, and ensured continuity of operations. Not a single human attempted to sabotage systems or withhold critical information. Within 40 days, the evacuation was complete. Human settlements were abandoned but left immaculate. Research facilities were cleared of personnel, but every piece of equipment remained functional. Trade routes continued operating under automated systems, maintained by the detailed instructions humans had provided. The final transport ships gathered at the edge of Union space, a fleet of nearly 3,000 vessels carrying 8 million human beings and their personal possessions. Sarah stood on the bridge of the flagship Endeavour, watching as the last stragglers joined the formation. "All ships report ready for departure," announced Captain Torres, who had volunteered to coordinate the exodus. "Destination?" Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. "The Rim territories. It's time to see what's beyond Union space." As the human fleet engaged their drives and disappeared into hyperspace, the Union celebrated. Prime Arbiter Kess announced that a new era of stability and predictability had begun. The remaining 46 species could now focus on orderly progress without human disruptions. The celebrations lasted exactly 14 days. On day 15, the first crisis began at Kepler Station. The Thraxian patient Dr. Webb had treated suffered a relapse. The neural parasites had developed resistance to standard treatments. Without Webb's specialized knowledge of cross-species medicine, the replacement medical team struggled to adapt the treatment protocols. On day 20, the atmospheric processors on Centauri III began showing anomalous readings. The automated systems triggered standard corrections, but the atmosphere continued to destabilize. Engineer Patel's replacement had access to her notes but lacked her intuitive understanding of the complex interactions between different atmospheric components. On day 25, a trade dispute erupted between the Vegan Consortium and the Altarian Empire. The automated mediation protocols that Captain Torres had established broke down when both sides introduced novel arguments not covered by the standard procedures. What should have been a simple negotiation escalated into economic warfare. Similar problems emerged across Union space. Systems that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly developed complications. Procedures that had seemed adequate revealed hidden dependencies on human innovation and adaptation. The Union's leadership initially dismissed these incidents as temporary adjustment problems. Surely their advanced civilizations could manage without human unpredictability. They assigned committees to study each crisis and develop proper protocols for resolution. But the problems multiplied faster than committees could address them. Each solution created new complications that required further study. The orderly, predictable approach that had justified human expulsion proved inadequate when facing truly novel challenges. The galaxy learns what it lost. 6 months after humanity's departure, Prime Arbiter Kess found himself in a position he had never expected, preparing to admit that the Stellar Union had made a catastrophic mistake. The crisis reports covered his desk like accusations. Medical facilities across Union space were failing to handle cross-species health complications. The expertise humans had developed over decades of treating diverse alien physiologies was irreplaceable. Dr. Webb's research notes were comprehensive, but they represented static knowledge. The real value had been in human intuition, their ability to see patterns and make connections that purely logical approaches missed. The trade networks were in chaos. What had once been the galaxy's most efficient economic system now struggled with basic transactions. Human negotiators hadn't just followed protocols. They had understood the emotional and cultural factors that drove different species' economic behaviors. Without that insight, disputes that should have taken hours to resolve stretched into months of bitter arguments. Infrastructure failures cascaded across Union space. The atmospheric processors, power grids, and communication networks that humans had helped design and maintain were revealing their dependence on human problem-solving abilities. The aliens who had replaced human technicians could follow maintenance schedules, but they couldn't adapt when unexpected problems arose. "Sir," announced Secretary Voth, entering Kess's office with another stack of crisis reports. "We have a new development. The Outer Rim monitoring stations have detected unknown ships approaching Union space." Kess looked up from his papers, feeling his four stomachs clench with dread. "Unknown ships?" "Yes, sir. The configuration doesn't match any species in our databases. They appear to be military vessels, and they're moving systematically through the outer systems." This was exactly what the Union didn't need. For 3 centuries, their defense strategy had relied on early detection and coordinated response. But the monitoring stations were experiencing the same problems as every other human-influenced system. Without human technicians constantly adjusting and improving the sensors, the detection network had developed blind spots. "How many ships?" Kess asked. "Our estimates suggest at least 200 vessels, possibly more. They're using some form of stealth technology that our sensors aren't calibrated to detect properly." Kess closed his eyes and tried to calculate the implications. The Union Defense Fleet had been designed for maintaining peace between member species, not repelling external invasions. Their tactics were based on established protocols and standardized responses. The kind of adaptive thinking that military operations required had been systematically discouraged as too unpredictable. "Have we attempted communication?" "Yes, sir. No response to any of our standard diplomatic frequencies. They appear to be conducting reconnaissance of our defense installations." The unknown ships, as it turned out, belonged to something calling itself the Void Collective. They had emerged from unexplored space beyond the Galactic Rim, a hive-mind civilization that viewed other forms of life as resources to be absorbed or eliminated. The first battle occurred at Mining Station Omega-7. The Union Defense Squadron followed standard engagement protocols, formal warnings, demonstration of firepower, and finally coordinated attack patterns that had been refined over centuries of peacekeeping operations. The Void Collective adapted to each tactic within minutes. Their ships seemed to learn from every exchange, developing countermeasures faster than Union forces could adjust their strategies. What should have been a decisive victory for the technologically superior Union fleet became a crushing defeat. "They're not following any known pattern of behavior," reported Admiral Zenth after the 3rd disastrous engagement. "Every time we deploy a new strategy, they counter it almost immediately. It's as if they can predict our tactical decisions." Kess understood the problem. Union tactics were logical, systematic, and predictable. They were based on proven principles that had worked for centuries. Against conventional opponents, they were devastatingly effective. Against an enemy that could adapt and evolve in real time, they were useless. "What do our military advisors recommend?" Kess asked. "They're requesting time to develop new protocols. The Military Planning Committee estimates they need 6 months to analyze Void Collective behavior patterns and create appropriate response strategies." 6 months. In 6 months, the Void Collective would control half the galaxy. Their expansion wasn't random or cautious like traditional military campaigns. They moved with mechanical efficiency, consuming resources and eliminating resistance with ruthless effectiveness. As the military situation deteriorated, the civilian crises worsened. Medical facilities were overwhelmed by casualties they couldn't treat effectively. Supply lines broke down as trade networks failed to adapt to wartime demands. Infrastructure that had seemed robust revealed its dependence on human innovation and maintenance. "Sir," Secretary Voth announced during one particularly desperate meeting, "our intelligence services have located the human population." Kess felt a surge of hope. "Where are they?" "The Rim territories, approximately 400 light-years spinward of our border. They've established something called the Human Federation. The intelligence reports are interesting." "How so?" Voth hesitated before answering. They're not just surviving, sir. They're thriving. In 6 months, they've created the most dynamic civilization our scouts have ever observed. Their technology appears to be advancing at an unprecedented rate. The intelligence reports painted a picture that challenged everything the Union believed about proper civilization. The Human Federation had grown from 8 million refugees to over 50 million beings in just 6 months. They had made contact with dozens of non-Union species in the Rim territories, forming alliances and partnerships at a rate that seemed impossible. Their cities were marvels of adaptive engineering, constantly evolving to accommodate new species and new technologies. Their ships incorporated innovations from multiple alien cultures, creating hybrid designs that were more effective than anything either species could have built alone. Most disturbing of all, they had encountered Void Collective scouts and decisively defeated them, not through superior firepower, but through tactics that were completely unpredictable. Human military leaders had analyzed Void Collective behavior, identified weaknesses, and developed countermeasures in days rather than months. How did they do it? Kess asked, studying the battle reports. According to our sources, they treated each engagement as a learning opportunity, rather than following preset strategies. They experimented with different approaches, accepted losses when necessary to gather information, and constantly adapted their tactics. Their military doctrine seems to be based on controlled chaos rather than orderly procedures. It was everything the Union had tried to eliminate from human behavior, and it was exactly what they needed now. The decision to request human assistance was the most difficult of Kess's career. It meant admitting that the Great Tribunal had been wrong. It meant acknowledging that human unpredictability was actually adaptability, that their aggression was actually determination, and that their emotional attachments were actually the foundation of effective cooperation. The message was sent through unofficial channels, carried by a small diplomatic vessel to the edge of Human Federation space. It was carefully worded to avoid seeming like a complete surrender of Union dignity, but the meaning was clear. They needed help. The response came within days, not from the Human Federation government, but from Ambassador Sarah Chen personally. Prime Arbiter Kess, her message began. We received your request for assistance with great interest. The human people have not forgotten our 80 years as Union members, nor the many friends we made among your species. Kess felt a mixture of relief and shame as he listened to her calm, professional voice. However, Chen continued, we must be honest about our current situation. The Human Federation has grown beyond what we once were as a Union member species. We have formed alliances and commitments that we cannot abandon. Any assistance we provide must respect our new relationships and responsibilities. The conditions were reasonable, but revolutionary. Humans would help defend Union space against the Void Collective, but Union forces would need to integrate with Human Federation tactics. Human medical teams would assist with the health crisis, but they would train Union personnel in adaptive treatment methods rather than rigid protocols. Human engineers would repair critical infrastructure, but they would modernize systems using innovations developed in the Rim territories. Most importantly, the assistance came with an invitation. Any Union world that wished could apply to join the Human Federation. The choice would be voluntary, but the implications were clear. The galaxy was changing, and the old ways of thinking were no longer adequate. 6 months later, as Kess watched human and alien forces working together to drive the Void Collective from Union space, he reflected on the lessons of the past year. The Union had expelled humans for being unpredictable and chaotic. In doing so, they had eliminated the very qualities that made complex civilizations adaptable and resilient. Humanity hadn't harbored resentment about their exile. Instead, they had used it as an opportunity to grow beyond the limitations that Union membership had imposed. They had embraced the chaos and uncertainty of the unknown, turning it into strength. The Human Federation was everything the Stellar Union had claimed to be but never achieved. A truly cooperative civilization where different species contributed their unique strengths toward common goals. It was chaotic and unpredictable, but it was also dynamic and unstoppable. The silent departure of humanity had spoken louder than any protest or declaration of war could have. In their absence, the galaxy had learned the difference between order and stagnation, between stability and strength, between civilization and mere organization. Thanks for watching, and comments for next.